mistook the dinner for my husband's gift. When I came downstairs, I could hear the gentle music, the flowers, and the dress he had laid out. Everything felt meticulously planned. However, his three pals entered when the door opened and grinned as though they knew something I didn't. I became aware that I was the surprise at that point. Please take a moment to like and subscribe to this video before I reveal what transpired next. It's fast. It is more beneficial than you may imagine. You won't want to miss what happens after this evening, I promise. I told him that my birthday shouldn't be a huge deal. Throughout the week, he maintained the same silent confidence while grinning and remaining silent, the kind that always indicated he had a plan. The house didn't feel like ours by the time I went downstairs. Soft jazz drifted through the air as if it had been waiting for me to notice. The lights were dimmed, and the table was arranged for 4 people rather than 2. He appeared too composed and was already there in a dark shirt with his sleeves rolled up. There was a silver box on my chair. It was filled with a deep wine-coloured dress that felt heavier than it appeared. I wore it upstairs along with the thin necklace he had given me years ago and a set of little gold earrings. His eyes informed me I had made the right decision when I descended again. Then there was a knock. 3 of his buddies, whom I had only seen a few times, were waiting at the door with a bottle of champagne and smiles that didn't quite fit the evening's mood. They truly meant it when they wished me a happy birthday. However, there was another element in the air that none of us brought up. They wanted to test how you would respond, he said. I had nothing better to do, so I laughed. With them inside, the space seemed smaller. They laughed naturally. Mine felt borrowed. I saw their exchange of glances as he poured the glasses, the kind that, if you're not searching for it, you almost miss. I realized then that I wasn't merely a part of whatever this night was. I was the focal point of it. Too effortlessly, the first glass fell. Perhaps the bubbles were the cause. Perhaps it was the way they all appeared to be anticipating something that I had not yet seen. The discourse remained civil. Inside jokes, old stories and glances that passed me by a bit too swiftly. He continued to observe me as if the night were a test, with an answer he already knew, but without being possessive or protective. When one of them praised the dress, I grinned. One person questioned how he had found someone who still blushes when someone compliments them. It was nearly innocuous. Like an interval, dinner arrived. Too quiet, too tidy. They asked questions that never seemed random while they alternated refilling my glass. Each one brought me closer to the moment I met him, the reason I said yes, and the things I had desired that evening. I initially assumed it was just the kind of curiosity that friends had after a few drinks. Then I noticed it, though. The way he smiled, leaned back, and let them lead the conversation without interfering. It wasn't impulsive. They had a strategy in place. He told us you'd handle surprises better than most, the youngest of them added, leaning forward. My heart began to race. He didn't refute it. All he replied was, "She does." I realized then that this had nothing to do with the supper, the clothing, or the praises. It was to see what I would do after realizing that the night was already predetermined. His final statement was not followed by a void. It had been loaded. One question looms above the 4 sets of eyes. I could practically hear their constraint. Somewhere beyond the faint lights, it hummed louder than the music that was still playing. I sat there for a while, letting the silence do the talking. One of them moved about in his seat. No one ventured to fill the void when another cleared his throat. Their attention followed me around like heat when I eventually stood. A candle that was burnt low enough to drip, half-finished glasses, melting ice, and remnants of dinner were still on the table. The satin of my sleeve whispered on the tablecloth as I carefully collected the plates. Every tiny motion seemed purposeful, amplified, and like a real-time decision-forming sound. With his arms and elbows resting on the chair, he observed with an unreadable look. There I sensed the tiniest glimmer of pride, or even be concerned. In any case, I had something to play with. It wasn't until the kitchen door swung behind me that I spoke. I took a big breath and made a decision there, with just the hum of the refrigerator as a witness. I would make this my surprise if it were his. The atmosphere had changed by the time I returned. They were holding out, inflexible postures and unsettling eyes. Like putting pieces on a board, I put each clean glass back on the table. Thus, I spoke in a measured and calm tone. Who will explain why the first portion wasn't told? Nobody responded. The youngest glanced at my husband, who gave her a small smile, as though keeping quiet was the goal. He made that error. The candlelight caught the burgundy tone of my dress as I moved closer to the table's edge. I whispered, "Then I'll explain it for you. I was invited to my own surprise by you, however, you forgot who brings the story to a close." Soft and steady, the line hung there. They didn't even move or breathe too loudly. Fear wasn't the reason. It was whole, unadulterated attention. I moved slowly enough to let my perfume waft between their shoulders as I followed them. Just presence, the kind that draws gravity with it, without any physical contact or gestures. The air had become nearly visible by the time I made my way back to my seat. He laughed and attempted to get better. "You're paying attention to this." I cocked my head. Must I not? One more stillness. This time it's longer. I allowed it to drag on until even the clock appeared uncertain about whether to continue. "If you all plan to watch, you can start by learning how patience feels," I remarked, as I finally reached for the candle and extinguished the flame. The room grew warmer and darker. Someone let out a breath. My name was whispered by someone else, and in that darkness, all the rules of the night gradually changed to my advantage. He was going to discover that this present, whatever he had assumed it would be, actually belonged to me. The room appeared brighter even though the candle was extinguished. Their faces were lined up by the dim light from the corridor, which allowed me to see the hesitancy I had been anticipating. When everyone knows that one person will make the next step, there is a heavy calm in the air. For a while, I remained put and allowed the silence to grow on them. When I did speak, it was hardly audible above a whisper. "Reposition the chairs, each and every one." They complied mindlessly. The floor was lightly scratched by wood. In the dimness, the sound is sharp. I avoided looking at my husband while he watched, uncertain about whether to step in or not. "Listen," I said now. The word itself took on a rhythmic quality. Nobody dared to occupy the void left by its echoes. I started to move slowly around the room, setting the tone. The fabric of the dress sighed as it moved against my legs. The slight clink of glass, the shift in breath, and the far-off hum of music looping from the speaker all got amplified. I came to a stop behind the youngest, just far enough for him to detect my presence without touching me. "Still think this was his plan?" I inquired. He shook his head, then realized that I couldn't see him do it. "No," he muttered. "Good." As I passed him, my shadow extended across him as I moved on to the next one. "And you?" After hesitating, he gave a hesitant laugh. "Not anymore." When I smiled, their laughter abruptly stopped. It was certain, but not cruel. I lifted a small circle of spilled wine to the light after tracing a finger through it at the table. "Every one of you wanted to see how far this would go," I said. "However, that isn't how it operates. That's not for you to determine." I turned to look at my spouse. His attitude was one of astonishment and bewilderment as he simply exhaled without moving. He appeared to comprehend for the first time that evening that I had completely revised the script after he had given it to me. I switched on a single lamp that was warm and low enough to bring everyone's faces out of the shadows. The softening edges of the light that drew between us revealed the rise and fall of every silent breath. "Look around," I said. "This is what happens when you plan something without asking who it's really for." Nobody disagreed. They were not required to. The room itself was now my response. I leaned calmly and steadily against the back of a chair. If there is one, you'll either wait until I tell you what I want, or you'll find out this way again, I said gently the next time. The words came out more forcefully than I intended. Nobody said anything. In between notes, even the music appeared to pause. After then, I turned to face the hallway. I pretended not to hear a sigh, a mumbled apology, and the faint scrape of chairs. I continued. I didn't have to. He had thought of the night. I had the power. I'm still not sure if he anticipated me taking charge, or if that was an unplanned element of the surprise. In any case, he learned something from the evening that he will never forget. Tell the truth. Would you have halted or allowed your partner's planned present to go through? Please let me know in the comments. I'm going to read. Please remember to like, subscribe, and enable notifications. If you like this story, it's the easiest method to ensure that you don't miss the next step.